Hello, hello. Welcome. We'll just give people a few minutes to join. Excellent. It's good to see people are punctual. Let's get started. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time today to join us. Just quickly, this is going to be an interactive webinar, and we really want to encourage you to put some prompts and questions, whatever comes to mind, in the chat. We'll also be running a few polls, and those polls will be really used for interaction and going through the strategy plan that Kerim has prepared for us today. So today's session is where are your growth opportunities hiding? And by the end of today, you'll have a clear, practical way to find growth that's already sitting right in front of you. Just from my recent chats with Kerim, I was really inspired by strategy ideas, and I'm sure you too will gain some excellent insights to apply to your business. So before we dive in, a quick word on who's hosting today. I'm Paula, Growth Manager here at OnBoard Outsourcing. We bring over 15 years of end-to-end VA staffing experience. We are an Australian-owned outsourcing partner, providing businesses with the assurance of an EOR, an employer of record, that offers compliance, IT security, ongoing HR, and yours truly as your host with the most for ongoing account management and business growth support. We have an experienced and amazing recruitment team who specialize in hiring according to the industry and also the skills for the job. We offer a no obligation approach. So that is right up until we find the right candidate for your company. And we also have a 6-month guarantee. Best of all, we provide a sense of belonging and social well-being, which is exactly why our retention stays strong. We built this session, invited Kerim, because growth strategy and having the right team to execute do go hand in hand. Teamwork makes the dream work. So let's get into it. I have the pleasure and the honor to introduce our guest, Kerim El Gabaili, who is a senior marketing strategist and business leader with experience across Mazda, Subaru, Accor, Knight Frank, and Charter Hall. He's an AMI Fellow and Certified Practicing Marketer with board, advisory, hands-on business ownership experience. Commercial, practical, and execution focus. Kerim has spent over 25 years helping businesses find growth they didn't even know was sitting right in front of them. Just a few of Kerim's career highlights I want to share with you today. So he's won 2 Australian Marketing Institute awards. He's also sat as the AMI Awards judge in 22, 23, 25. Led 1 point to FBA Deloitte fastest growing business recognition in New South Wales and ACT. Chaired for a 13 company digital cooperative representing approximately 19 million in turnover. So very impressive highlights. And today we're not only chatting with a strategist, but someone who has applied these methods himself and in a wide range of industry types. So thank you so much, Kerim, for joining us today. Welcome.
Thank you. Really excited to be here.
Excellent. So let's kick this off with a big question. We're going to have our first poll pop up. Where do you see your growth opportunities coming from? So guys, whilst you're in there, just, click the ones that resonate with you. Don't overthink it. Just go with the flow. And whilst that's coming through, Kerim, can you walk us through what do you see as a typical situation when you're speaking to your clients?
Thank you, Paula. Look, what I find very interesting is often people will go to execution, task-related actions rather than planning and strategy. It's almost like if you're building a house, you don't call the plumber or the bricklayer. You call the architect first, so you've got a plan then to pass on to the plumber and the bricklayer. So when we talk about a plan, we talk about strategy. So I'm always conscious that the word strategy is a bit of a motherhood statement. It gets thrown around. So I'm going to give you my definition for the purpose of the exercise. So to me, a strategy is the quickest way to an objective with the least amount of risk. That's it. Simple as
Yep.
that. So when I look at that and I think about risk and the quickest way to an outcome as a strategy, I start to think about, well, first of all, what is the destination? So getting clarity around what success looks like. And it's incredible that sometimes and often when I ask my clients, if you had a magic wand and a crystal ball and we were here 12 months from now, what would success look like? And they get stuck often. And the response is often, "Oh, we want 20% growth in our business." Okay,
Mm.
fantastic. Let's unpack that. Right? Where's it coming from?
Yes. Yep.
And
We've got some
often,
answers that have popped up
yeah,
here. I'm not sure if you can see that, Karim.
yep, referrals, existing clients, perfect. Often
Yep.
clients always think about growth with new business, but they don't think about that, what's your retention rate like? If you're losing 10%, can we reduce that to 5? What's your upsell and cross sell like? By the time we go through that exercise, that 20%, 10% is really low lying fruit within your own database, right? And
Right.
then the other 10% is new business. And new business is the most expensive to get. So if you've got already a trusting relationship and you've got credibility, with existing relationships and clients, that is the go to, first and foremost, of course, and that includes retention.
Okay, fantastic. So we've seen here that obviously strategy is important, but before you start, what's the first thing you do to make sure you mentioned something about stopping the churn or stopping the bleeding before you get started with the strategy? So as a first starting point, can you walk us through what that might look like?
Absolutely. So first of all, it's determining what is the churn. If it's 5, 10, 15%, depending on different businesses, it changes. Second of all, is understanding the signals that people that are about to leave start to show. Understanding if there's if the business has an engagement process. And engagement is doesn't have to be super sophisticated. It's just being visible because often people forget about you, right? So visibility, credibility is all part of your marketing monthly cycles. Do you send out newsletters? Do you occasionally post on social media? How do you stay visible and top of mind, right?
Yes,
And
that
then
is
the
so
signals
important.
that support that will give you indications on whether someone is going to leave. And it depends on the relationship. If you have monthly transactions with clients, whether you have quarterly transactions with clients, how do you keep the relationship connected is the first thing. So if you don't have anything in place, it's very hard to determine, who's moving on and who isn't. So you've got to be able to
Yes.
do that.
Definitely. I mean, I'd
Um,
love to hear more on
yeah.
that one. But what
So
about like the topic today is, you know, working out where your opportunities are hiding and that they might be right in front of you. Why don't we launch the second poll, which is directed towards that? So when did you last reach out to, say, 5 of your existing clients with a clear strategy? So we've talked about the importance of having a strategy. How often are people reaching out to their clients typically? What do you see? I mean, I know personally, sometimes I leave it too long and then I think, oh God, I'm going to go back and reconnect with them. But I do need a strategy first. So I can't just go in and say, hey, hi, here I am. Um, but yeah, so why don't you walk us through what that might look like, please?
absolutely. So I'm going to share with you the 1 point blueprint around uh, connecting in a, I guess, intelligent way with clients. And it's also our blueprint for content creation. And it basically comes down to what is the problem? What are the consequences of that problem? So are they big enough to discuss? What is the solution and why should they choose you? Right. So if
Yes.
you
Yep.
look at those 4 steps, I would engage with a customer that I haven't spoken to in a while around questions that really talk to their challenges because
Yes.
people
They're
buy
pain
solutions.
points.
Yes, people buy solutions and
Yep.
opportunities. But don't forget, human psychology shows us that we act a lot more out of fear than we do out of opportunity. So solving problems that have big consequences to their business is the good starting point. So asking questions around, what problems are they facing? But you've got to do your research. You've got to understand what the industry at the moment is currently facing, and you can ask some questions that prompt thinking on their behalf, because sometimes clients are very busy, don't get to think about those things. So
Yeah.
very
We've
pointed questions help.
we've got an impressive crowd here. We've got quite a few members have reached out this week and this month. And a few, of course, they're being honest, I can't remember when. So that I think is common, isn't it? You've got that traction with that client and you've said, okay, moving on, chasing the next opportunity. So yeah, talk to me about that 25%.
What? Sorry, can you repeat?
The I can't remember when they last reached out.
Well, that's typical. Let's not forget that a typical SME, the owner and the business owner wears 25 hats. They're juggling from one thing to another. What's interesting about that is, just as a side note, is that 90% of Australian businesses don't get past the first S curve, right? So they stay in around under $1.5 million. So we're a country full of small businesses.
Mm.
And they're
There might be
entrepreneurs.
some psychology in that as well.
Well, it's the fear of letting go too, I
Yeah.
suppose.
Yeah, like a
Very,
poverty mindset and all sorts of things, I think sometimes,
it could
like
be a range.
limited beliefs, a whole of that. But we're not talking about
Yeah,
psychology
exactly
today.
right. That's not surprising
Yeah,
that people don't remember the last time, because they are juggling many hats as business
that's
owners.
true. Yeah.
So it's got to be like most things, they've got to be intentional. You've got to put in your diary, you know, Monday I'm calling, this person, Tuesday, Thursday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or it could be I'm setting aside an afternoon, I'm going to speak to all these 5 clients. It's got to be
Yeah.
intentional. But it doesn't surprise me that a lot of people are not reaching out.
Yeah. Okay. So just on that point, you mentioned, five clients and intentional. So that's also something that's quite interesting because, do you go to all of your database or, do you hone in and really focus? And how do you hone in and reach out to those people in particular?
So
You
what
you
I would
mentioned an
do,
example when we first chatted about the law firm.
yeah, so I just want to go back. And I think here's one of the steps of our 7-step strategy, process and
Yep.
journey that we take clients on is developing customer personas, right? And identifying what good business looks like. And often, I speak to a client, and I'll say, well, what's good business for you? And they'll say, Kareem, these 5 clients, they're the best clients because they give us the biggest, turnover. And I say, great, because most businesses work on the 80/20 rule. But and when I say, okay, so they're giving you the greatest turnover, what's the GP? And they'll lean back and, oh, the GP is very low, it's volume based. I said, so you want to continue working hard for less profit? And then they'll stop and they'll think about that and go, actually, no. So it's not surprising. And sometimes it's the third tier client, because the third tier client, the GP is good. They're sticky because they're buying maybe 2 or 3 of the services within that business. And it's harder to
Mm,
leave a business when you're buying more than 3 services. They refer business. They're nice people to work with. They pay their bills on time. So if you're clear around what good business looks like, they're the ones I'd be going to look at within your database and say, I'm going to grow my
okay.
business based on these clients.
Okay. Fabulous. So just with that, when you're going to reach out to them, it says here, like most of our audience today, they actually know their clients, which is fabulous. So just to prepare for that conversation, would you do anything to get started? Like how would you research where they're at or the industry? Do you use AI? Tell us your secret, please.
But look, we live in a world where you can't say anymore, I don't know, right? That's like, even when my kids come up to me and say, Dad, how do you do this? Oh, I don't know how to do that. I say, mate, this phrase is gone.
Yeah.
We're so blessed with the AI platforms that help you dig deep relatively quickly. My approach is, if I look at, let's say I look at a customer profile and I say, well, I've got these 3 clients or 5 clients that are currently using 5 of my services. they fit this profile, right? And then I'll go look for five clients and go, well, they're exactly the same profile, but they're only buying one service. So there's, based on the on the profiles that are very similar, there's a possibility that I could upsell and cross sell two other of my services or two other products. That's the
Right.
first thing
Okay.
I identify. Once I've identified that, then I can go and say, create my questions so they sort of head towards that particular service that I'm providing, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very strategic approach. Get the right tier of client, get the profile of the client, understand the industry challenges, and remember that industry's challenge doesn't relate necessarily to their challenge. So you've got to understand what role are they in. Because when we build
Mm.
profiles, we can be talking about a profile within a specific industry, but that challenge for them will vary whether they're the CEO, the
The
COO,
CFO.
or the
Yep.
CFO. So the
Yes.
service that
Yep.
you're providing needs to talk to all three, right? But in this case, it depends who you're speaking to. You need to have that distinction very clearly defined. So when you ask the questions, they're both relatable to them as they are relatable to your services.
Right. Okay. So I think it'd be good if the audience could maybe put in the chat who are the industries that they're talking to, and we could use this as potential discussion point as well, because I think having experience working across varying businesses and yourself working in hospitality, running a hospitality business and property businesses, like you've gone across so many different um, ways to reach that market and obviously, grow those business and bring in strategy and everything else. So wealth of knowledge here. And I think guys in the audience, by all means, put some questions, some pain points, any clients that you're struggling to have breakthrough with. Um, we can really use this time and have a practical outcome as well. Um, so yeah, so with that, if you want to re-engage with someone and start the conversation, how would you do that? Would you use like a marketing strategy, like EDMs, or would you go direct to the source? Would you try and open up, speak to other, you mentioned C-suites, so would you try and meet other members of the C-suites and decision makers?
Look, now we've moved on to customer journey, right? So if you map out that customer journey from awareness, engagement, conversion, retention in those four sectors, then if we're reconnecting, making ourselves visible again, right? And it doesn't matter. This example is good to clients, the customers that don't know you, and customers that do know you. But if you're looking to re-engage, can I share a story with you with one of my clients?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Because customer journey design is really channel agnostic, right? When I say channel agnostic, and which is what I am, I never look at whether it's going to be social media, digital media, direct marketing. I
A
leave those.
cold call or phone call.
Oh, cool, phone call. There are so many channels, like I used to
Yep,
buy a lot of media, radio, television, newspapers, magazines, billboards, cinema space. So I leave that all out and I go, what's my customer journey? What's my first touch point? And how is it going to take me to the second touch point, the third, the fourth, and the fifth?
great.
So
Yep.
the story goes like this. I got a client, George Karam, and I'm sure he wouldn't mind me using his name because I want to make sure that people, it's a believable and not a made up.
That's
He
fine.
owns a company called Crosby Projects. They do fit outs for really high value projects like the Rolex watch in the city and things like that. And he said to me, Kareem, it's really hard to talk to interior designers and architects. And I said to him, I said, George, what's important to them? He said, you finish your jobs on time, on spec, and on time, on spec, and on budget. I said, okay. So what I did was we had to create awareness. We had to cut through, and we knew that the normal channels wouldn't allow us to do that. The easy channels. So what we did is we got like those white cake boxes. We
Yep,
put all these little foam balls in there, and we put a pair of thongs, and we did this beautiful brochure that you can relax when you're with Crosby Projects. It was personalized to the recipient, had a guy lying back on the beach, And
Mm,
we
that's
presented
good.
all the beautiful jobs that George did. And then I said to George, okay, who do you want to speak to, George? And he said, these are the five I want to speak to. So we tied it up with a beautiful ribbon. We had it hand delivered. And obviously, the story is that when people got it and they opened it up, they looked, they had a giggle, they had a pair of thongs in there, but they all looked at the brochure.
Felt. They looked at the brochure
They
and they
all looked
probably
at the
shared
brochure.
the whole with the whole room as well. So you also got
Absolutely.
immediate referrals there.
It became novel. But the
Yeah,
beautiful thing about it is when George rang up and said, I'm the guy who sent you the thongs, he quickly got to speak to the architect, interior designer, because it was a bit,
nice.
we broke
Yeah, it's
through.
original.
Yeah. And then the journey went on. But everyone that he wanted to speak to, he was able to speak to. What did we do? We sent a $30 box, quite frankly, between the thongs, the foam balls, the printed material, and the
Yeah.
box. So for 30 bucks,
Okay.
you got to speak to high value
It doesn't
customers.
have to, yeah, it doesn't have to be super expensive and to
No.
impress.
So
We've got some members who have mentioned some questions here. So how do you manage procrastination? Oh, okay. I've got 12 years in sales specifically, and yeah, that's a very frustrating situation. So you feel like you've given everything, I've shown you my value, I've shown you my credibility, and they're still procrastinating.
I
We
can
want
do
to we want to close, Karim.
I can tell you that very, very easily how why that's happening.
Hmm.
Because you haven't been able to articulate the value, the exchange of value,
Okay.
right? Um, it's critical. People buy solutions and they want to get rid of problems. If you haven't identified the problem, if you haven't identified the risk that that problem presents, um,
Resolves.
people are not going
Oh,
to.
the problem. Yeah, exactly. Okay. Yep.
Yeah, because it's not just the problem; it's the consequence.
Yes, that's right. It's like the
The two
risk to
have to
your
be
brand,
packaged.
to your lagging,
Absolutely. And
loss
people,
of income revenue potential, the whole bit.
yeah, the whole you've got to unpack that. If I'm always when I take on a new client, my journey, my sales journey is I sit down, it's a meet and greet, make sure we all like each other. You know, the personalities, we click. The next phase is I tell them I'm gonna do a discovery session, right? And in that discovery session, 2 days before, I send them the questionnaires. Then we go through the questionnaire, right? This is all recorded. And
Mm,
my goal is to present a reverse brief, right?
okay.
Basically, explain to them what they want from me, right?
Right. That's interesting.
So out of that, there's that clarity that you've helped them achieve as well. Before I even give them the proposal, and just before the proposal goes out, I go back and I make sure that so these are the problems, these are the budgets, this is the time frame that you want to solve it in. And if I got this right, Mr. Customer, and they'll say, "Yep, okay, good. I'm going to present you a proposal just the way you want it." So they're fully in control. You've helped them on the journey of getting clarity, and you're presenting back to them what they want from you rather than what you think they want from you, right? So the groundwork is all in the lead up to the proposal. The proposal is
I have a feeling there's a bit of psychology in that as well.
100%. Of course, there is.
You're lining up the expectations as well.
Yeah, there's always been
Nice.
psychology in sales.
Yes, yeah, of course. Yeah. Some
It's
some of us do
people,
it naturally and others,
it's people working with
read
people.
the
Always
books.
remember that when you put everything aside, and I did a whole presentation on the psychology of the environment. There's a math. There's a thousand apps out there. There's a thousand channels out there. Everything is constantly changing. The one thing that doesn't change is us.
Yeah,
We're
nice.
still human,
Okay.
and we
We're
are
all
still
human.
driven by
We
emotion.
want results, really. I mean, people are putting a lot of investment as well into growth strategies these days. So, um, they have every right to do that. So, in terms of strata companies, you've worked a lot through the property sector. One of our members today asked about strata companies, lawyers, landlords, retailers. You mentioned about the audience and the right channel. Do you have, I mean, we're both BNI. We know that BNI is absolutely, we can plug BNI here, definitely for this question, I think. It is a good strategy for reaching this market. But of course, if you're going to like a mid-tier or tier one in this sector, do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, again, I'll give you a case study. Um, an accountant came to me and we were having a chat. He was based in Chatswood. he said to me, he said, Kareem, I spent the last 12, 18 months on LinkedIn. I spent about 20 grand content creation and boosting. I said, how did that work? He said, look, it worked okay. We got some business out of it, but it wasn't our ideal client. I said, what's an ideal client? He said, somebody in professional services. I said, can you be a little bit more specific? He said, engineers. He said, with an engineer, I can win the business. I can do his personal tax returns, and chances are he's got a couple of properties, and I'm going to do his self-managed super fund. That's an ideal customer for me. I said, great. Let's talk to, I think it's Amanda. She's the marketing manager at the Australian Institute of Engineers. There's 135,000 engineers there with about
Gosh.
$10,000, $15,000. You get to sponsor them. You get to do webinars with them. You get to write off the back of the credibility of the institute. And he almost fell backwards because he said, what? I get to speak to 135,000 engineers? I said, yes, you do. So the point in this is that
Mm.
I have a strong background in direct marketing. So my favorite thing is I don't want to spend 12 months on social media and digital media. It has its place, don't get me wrong. But I'd rather go to a database company and say, mate, here's the money, give me 3,000 names, right?
Really? You believe in that?
Yeah, absolutely. And not only I believe it, it works. Uh,
Okay.
so I can target my audience. Now I've got my persona, I've got my audience, I understand their problem. I can use that across LinkedIn platforms by making sure that I profile correctly. I can do direct marketing campaigns. I can do a whole range of different things, right? But more
Yeah.
importantly, my first go-to strategy is always go to where everybody's drinking. Go to join the Australian Institute of Engineers or join the certified practicing accountants or the CPA. Go to where your customer is hanging out. That's
Yeah,
you
that's
can
true. I mean,
network.
you have to get out there. And actually, I just put a
Really.
little mention here for the marketing team because I am really blessed. I do want to say my marketing team over in the Philippines, they're present, they're here, they're hiding behind the scenes, but they're driving this whole thing for me. So, you need to have team support. And that's what we're here for. And Karim also for your strategy and all the thinking behind it. But yeah, I just want to actually, I might just put the next poll up there if that's okay. So, how do your client conversations usually start? Um, because sometimes, reopening, especially if you haven't spoken to someone for a while, just starting that conversation can be the first thing that we need to step into and get through. Um, do you have any tips yourself, Karim? Do you normally go in with a bit of small talk, chit chat, or do you go? I've stepped into conversations whilst networking, and people come right up to me and they say, "Hey, Paula, you really need to speak to this person, or you really need to sit down with me, and we need to talk about that." I'm like, you know what? I actually don't mind that direct approach either, because everyone's busy and they know what I need, and so they come and address that pain point directly. We get straight to the talk of business. What do you think, Karim?
I think you're dealing with humans, and humans
Yes,
are
true.
all different, right? And some people don't mind that approach. Other people are spooked by that approach, and
Mm,
it's like going into a room. You've got to feel the room, right? You've got to understand the vibe. And I think there's nothing wrong with starting with small talk, and but it's got to be authentic. To be honest, you've got to be authentic in your process. I think people do business with people, right? And they do business with people they trust and like. So
yeah,
becoming likable and becoming a person of trust is part of the relationship building. So while people refer to it as small talk, it's kind of an authentic identity around that. But if you genuinely do it with good intent of getting to know the person, building a relationship, understanding their needs, I think that's not a bad way to do it.
yeah. That is really the art of networking. One tip that someone gave me when we did a networking session and preparing for, an event you're attending is to do your research also up front. So who's going to be in the room? Pick, 3 to 5 people that you really want to speak to and know their industry type as well. So you can get that conversation started. Personally, I like to go in with small talk and build that relationship naturally and authentically. But I do think that can work for people who are not as confident, not as skilled at that, interpersonal conversational style of connecting and growing their business relationships. So here we've got most of our rooms said with small talk, wherever they take it, and no one actually said with a clear outcome in mind. So I think that is the human element.
Mm. And again, that comes down to that customer journey, right? What
Yeah.
happens when you meet somebody at, say, BNI or a networking event? It's getting to know them. It's, making sure you get their details. There's great CRM systems that you can put those details into, which then immediately send out, a message saying, hey, it was great to meet you, Paula. Look forward to maybe having a one-to-one, getting to know you a little bit better. And you have that one-to-one, and then the journey continues, right? It's always good to have a clear strategy, or journey in place, so that you know what your first intention is right through to the end. Like I spoke before, the first touch point's got to take you to the second, the third, the fourth, the fifth, right? So
Yeah.
having that clarity is really helpful. I mean, if you know who's in the room, then that's even that sort of, makes life a little bit easier, because you can prepare and research. In an
Yes,
ideal
yep. I
world, I don't
know
know how many
a lot of
people actually do it.
the
Yeah,
chambers these days are great at that. They're sharing the list prior so people
absolutely.
can get ahead of the game.
Yeah.
Um, I was going to ask you, you mentioned earlier about social media and, you don't spend too much focus on that, whereas other marketing strategists really hone in on that whole meta ads and all sorts of things. What about LinkedIn? Can you tell me a little bit about LinkedIn and what your view is of that for marketing?
Look, I just want to. We use social media for our clients. There's no doubt about it. I mean,
Of course,
we
yeah. You
have
need to
different
be front of
strategies.
mind.
Yeah, we have different strategies. When we look at our automotive clients, we use social media because you've got to advertise within your PMA, permitted marketing area. And it's a great way to stay visible within your community. And they've got to win a certain degree of local business. So we use social media for that. It's the most affordable, and I guess channel for that. And it's interesting that when we look at their service department, we'll use LinkedIn, because we'll try and promote the service department to the businesses in the area as well. But LinkedIn, there's so many different ways that you can use LinkedIn. It's very different platform to what it was years ago. It's very saturated. You know what it's like. You connect with somebody, before you know it, you get this automated message, and it goes on and on and on. Everybody quickly tries to sell you. I find that it turns me off more than it turns me on. To be
Okay.
honest, when
Yeah.
people automatically think they can solve all my problems, they've never had a conversation with me. They've never understood what my challenges are. And so I'm not saying it's not a great channel. I think it's a spectacular channel for business to business, but it's a great channel to also build credibility and stay top of mind as well.
Yes. Yep.
And if you know how to profile well, you can certainly stay top of mind and create awareness to an audience that is important to you, right?
Yep.
LinkedIn is a strategy all of its own, and we can spend quite a long time discussing how to use LinkedIn best.
Yep. Yep.
But I'm a fan
And
of it.
there's so many tools out there as well now that make it a lot easier. But yeah, you want to stay within certain parameters of that. I just want
Sorry, can I just
to,
say one thing? If
yeah,
you
sure.
don't have that clarity again at the beginning of what success looks like, what a good customer looks like, what your customer journey looks like, the chances of your social media working well is going to be you're going to have some challenges.
Yep, fabulous. You mentioned earlier your seven-step framework. I think, we're going to be running short of time soon. I do want to leave the channel open. If there's any other questions, guys, this is the time. Pop some questions in there. Something that's really, you're struggling with or that you want to uh, have some breakthrough in. Feel free to open it up on the channel chat. Uh, the seven-step framework, could you give us a bit of a high-level understanding of what that looks like and take us through it, please?
Yes. So the first one is be clear around what success looks like. The second step is research. Third step is building out a customer persona. The fourth step is around having a clear brand document and position in the market. Then you've got I think we're up to our fifth. Yep, fifth is making sure your marketing assets are on brand, on point, and on message. Six is making sure you have technology. So, a CRM system, something like HubSpot, that is tagged in all your channels across your website, on your newsletters, so you know where the I guess the traffic is coming from, what's working, what's not working. And number seven is getting that customer journey mapped out.
Okay. So if you were to pick two of those seven steps, w which ones would you say would be the most
I think the most important one is clarity,
Clarity. Okay, so that's really the very early
very
stage.
beginning. But
And
if
that
you
would also be building out your customer persona, I guess.
no, clarity is commercially focused.
Okay. So what would
Clarity is
fall
all
under that?
about commercial. It's all about commercially focused. It's understanding what's the business objectives, and then marketing lines up behind it. Because marketing has to deliver commercial outcomes. So you need to understand what they are first and foremostly. So that would be my number one to do. And then number two is do the research, definitely.
Yeah. And when you're sitting with a client to build out clarity, is that through, like you mentioned, questionnaires, conversations? Does it take some time? Do you go through their finances? Like, how do you do that?
Well, it's funny. Some clients don't mind. I've got a client that just sent me all their finances for the last 2 years on the spring period because they're in a sector where spring is big. So we can make sure we have clear commercial objectives around spring coming this year, and so we align what we're going to do to achieve those. But yeah, it's a range of questions that we take them through to get help them, which prompts them to think about the commercial objectives that they're trying to achieve, and, and getting clarity around why they decide to spend money on marketing.
Yeah. And I guess going back to the initial part of our conversation, understanding their clients, those tier of clients and the ones that are sitting right in front of them that potentially they've not taken for granted, but they've not put too much effort into.
100%. It's the cheapest form of new business or,
Yeah.
recurring revenue.
Yeah. Fabulous. So when it comes to, how do you build a customer persona for your branding? Because that's obviously going to be driving also your channel, your way to market. Do you have any tips for that and or any AI
Look,
prompts?
absolutely. I think there's two parts to building a persona, or you can argue there might be three, but I think there's the demographic and the psychographic. The demographic is the typical things: industry, title, responsibilities, age, geography,
Hmm.
all that sort of stuff, right? And it's really good to have that in your CRM as well,
Yeah, of
because you
course. Like
can
where are they
really,
spending their time? Are they on TikTok? Are they
yeah,
Facebookers?
yeah,
Millennials?
yeah, I mean, yeah, what the preferential channels are, absolutely. But getting that demographic data in there is important, but also getting their psychographic data in there is important. Understanding what they're feeling, what they're thinking, as well. What's really really important. One of the things that I mentioned before is understanding what are the key challenges for this person in this industry. What's the challenge for a CFO in the property sector? What's their key challenges?
Yeah,
What's the consequences of those challenges if they're not dealt with? What's the solution independent of us? Very important.
yeah.
Then, lastly, is why should they choose us to solve that problem?
Amazing. So that's really what we want to talk to. We want to talk to those pain points, those challenges, whether it's in a direct conversation or in an email follow-up and building our credibility. Amazing. So just some tips for building credibility, some resources people can use if they've not got that already. For example, when I started OnBoard, we created a capability statement, which we didn't have, and a few other documents to support data, cybersecurity, things like that. Do you have any tips and suggestions?
I have one:
Okay, good.
do what you say what you do.
Oh, that's good. I like that.
That's
Be
it.
human and deliver. Deliver on your promises.
Yep, and be authentic. Sometimes we say something, we can't maybe achieve it quite well. It's about being upfront and say, look, I'm challenged here and I need to, maybe I need more time, or I need to change direction, or I think, but just I think the one thing that we all need to learn is to be human and to be vulnerable and to be authentic.
Yeah, very good. And thank you, Raz, for your feedback as well, the AI guru, to give that a template and so it will work better. Peter DeMayo, hello. We find that social media can be a double-edged sword, so to speak. It can be good for brand awareness, but may yield inquiries for micro business or nickel and dime opportunities. How do you steer the message toward quality opportunities?
I think you've got to define what quality is first. right? And this is where that clarity piece comes in because often there's a lot of motherhood statements out there, right? And I always I'm very big on definition around words. So I think once you define what quality leads are, then then you can reverse engineer that, Paula, because then you know exactly, is it a large business, is it a medium-sized business, it's located in Wetherill Park, or is it located in North Sydney? Is it 5 people? Is it 50 people? Is it 2 million? Is it 50 million? You've got to define what quality is because once you've identified what that is, that's when all the rest of the magic happens.
Yeah, you define that around that. So it's really understanding the strategy and the persona and having clarity. So thank you so much. I think we're going to run out of time soon. If there's no more questions, I might just wrap up and also mention we've got the opportunity here for anyone who wants to have a direct conversation with Kerim. Kerim's very generously offering a discovery session on the phone or in a virtual. So we will send out an EDM. So look out for that. So everyone who's attended today will receive that invite. And also for us, of course, we're always happy to speak to you about any VA requirements, but we've also launched an alliance partner program. So if you're a fractional partner or an advisor and you're working predominantly with Australian SMEs, we'd love to love for you to check out our alliance program, which is available also on our website if you want to have a little sticky beak there. So thank you. Karim, do you have any closing words for everyone to leave your inspiration with us, please?
They've always
Put
said
you on
that.
the spot there, by the way. Sorry.
Okay. I think everybody always says that marketing is a bit of science and a bit of art, and I think that's so true. I think the science is becoming more than the art. So we've got great data and great platforms to be able to really get good numbers. So I think, but marketing is experimental, and what will work today may not necessarily work tomorrow. So it's a constant evolving
That's
environment.
true. And that's something that we have as responsibility for our business is to
Yeah,
stay ahead of the curve and
yeah,
make sure that we're also doing our own bit.
exactly right. So the big takeaway for me is continue to learn to be human because people connect with people.
Oh, love that. Thank you.
Welcome.
Excellent. And marketing team, do you want to give us a wave? Because you are also human. Pam, Jess, yes, no. All right. That's fine. Okay, guys, thank you so much for today. And I really appreciate your time. There we go. There's Pam. Pam's actually visiting Australia at the moment. So she's down in Melbourne. She came to Sydney last week. So I had the pleasure to meet her in person. And by the way, we do really fabulous parties in Manila. So if anyone comes on board with us, we invite you to our events. And yeah, thank you again, everyone. We will see you for the next one.
See you
Ciao.
guys.
See
Ciao.
you. Bye, everyone.